Welcome to the Autosportradio.com 2021 show. We are finally back. We've been off for several weeks with part of our gang that got exposed to the COVID virus and had to quarantine until they got a positive test back, which they did last week. So we've lined up some guests again, and we're back and running. So hopefully you'll be able to follow us, and I'll send an announcement out, which you will have gotten before you see this, that we're back. Today's show is presented by Honda and Honda HPD, the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, the NTT IndyCar Series, the SVRA, McGilvery's Pub and Eatery and Speedway, and VP Insurance. A couple of things to mention. If you, everybody loves to go see a dentist. Well, I'm going to tell you one that you will actually love to go see, and that's the Indy Dental Group. It's Dr. Jack Miller and Dr. Liz Lewis. And Jack, of course, is a 500 veteran. Have spectacular practice and probably the highest rated in the state. If you need an appointment, get your teeth checked. I highly recommend it, and you'll like it. Their number is 317-846-6125. And if you are prone to problems with your computer, which I seem to have quite frequently, we have now the A+ Affordable Computer Doctor, and the doctor is Steve Freeze. And something new, if you have a problem, he can make a house call to take care of it. It's quicker that way. So give him a call, tell him your problem, see what he can do for you. The number is 317-328-0766. And we'll be coming up here shortly, or probably another month or two, talking with Paul Page. He's got a book that's just about ready to be published and out the first part of May. It's called Hello, I'm Paul Page. It's race day in Indianapolis. What you want to do is get your order in. You can pre-order on Amazon or Barnes & Noble. So get in there, get your copy, and I'm sure that Paul will be wandering around the Speedway in May with plenty of pens to autograph them, so take care of that. If you haven't subscribed to the Classic Racing Times, you got to do it. Their last issue had the story of George Harrison of the Beatles and really how fascinated he was with motorsports. So if you haven't subscribed to it, go to classicracingtimes.com and subscribe. It's really worth it. Well-written stories, good pictures. You'll enjoy it. If it's time for you to update your home or your car or your commercial property insurance, do what most of us have done and call Mike Pardee at VP Insurance. They're located at 5004 West 16th Street in Speedway. Give them a call. Tell them what you need. The number is 317-248-0070. That's Mike Pardee at VP Insurance and Speedway, 317-248-0070. And if you ever wondered to yourself, why in the world do these guys and gals want to get in a car that's going 230 or 240 miles an hour? Well, why don't you find out? Take a ride in the Indy Racing Experience 2-seater. You'll find out how really exciting it is. So you can go to indyracingexperience.com and find a date that'll work for you and book a ride. But in the promo box, put DK1, you get a 50% discount. If you are, in fact, into now, Trans Am is really making a big comeback, and SVRA is behind that. Tony Parella owns it. You want to see what's going on, you need to subscribe to Speed Tour Magazine. Simply go to svra.com and sign up and subscribe to it. It's a great magazine. It's a first class. It's not one of those little raggy things you find at the grocery store. It's a class magazine, good stories, good pictures, and a lot of the drivers you knew as a kid, some of them are running vintage cars, so check it out. And you'll also get on the tab of the schedule, check it out, see where they're going to be anywhere near you. I highly recommend you go visit them. That's SVRA. Check it out. And if you have an interest in getting a vintage car, or you have one and need it restored, Grand King Shops are the place to do it. Give them a call, tell them what you have or what you're looking for, and they can help you in all phases. Their number is 317-820-3595. And keep in mind, you need to get down here when things open up and you come and see the Grand King Race Shops. It is a working museum. It's really quite interesting. Great cars here, old cars, a lot of Grand King cars. Interesting place. You want to take a tour, give them a call. The number is 317-820-3595. Now, my guest today is a gentleman that I've had the pleasure of knowing for a number of years. He has spent the majority of his life, if not most all of it, involved in motorsports in one way or another. He's represented sponsors. He's worked with sponsors. He's been with some very successful teams. So he's been around the game for quite some time, and he just came out with a book, but we'll talk about that in a minute. Please welcome my friend, Mr. Mark Dill. Mark, how are you?
I'm doing great, Don. Thanks for having me.
How did you get involved in motorsports and to be in the first place.
Well, I was born in Indianapolis, and I just had
That'll do it.
Yeah, that's a big step there. But I, just from a little boy, I mean, before I could remember, my parents told me I was like 3 years old, standing up in the bench seat of my dad's Bel Air Chevy, and I'd point to cars going by and name them, and they had no idea how I knew that, and I have no idea how I knew that, but it was, I guess, DNA. I don't know, but I just became an avid fan of the sport, and the Indy 500 captured my imagination. I mean, that was literally the only show in town the whole year back then, and I got fascinated with Jimmy Clark. And by the way, today is Jimmy Clark's birthday, and I just have wonderful memories. I hero worship that guy, and and then as I grew older, I had a good opportunity. I worked when it was called Indianapolis Raceway Park, worked for Don Dakin as a news director. And after college, I went out for a job, went out to LA and hooked up with Cow Club. I always wanted to just feel what it was like to be in a race car and be surrounded. The start is harrowing and exciting at the same time. And I did that for like 3 years and realized that wasn't the best thing for me, and got serious about corporate life, and eventually ended up in an executive position with Nortel that I could, had some latitude in directing sponsorship dollars. So we hooked up with Scott Goodyear, who remains a good friend, and Fred Treadway. And of course they had Ari, and we sponsored Ari for the one race, the right race, the one he won. And so the Indy 597, I got to go to Victory Lane. I never dreamt that would happen, but even got a swig of the milk, and just continue on from there. I started writing stuff for the Indianapolis Motor Speedway programs, not just the 500, but all of them, and always taking a look at the history of the sport. And it's just been something that's fascinated me. History and writing is literally in my bones. And I did a 3-season stint at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway as a VP of marketing, and but was writing this book all along when I could find the time, and finally got it done.
Amazing how if you put enough time and effort into it, eventually, if you live long enough, you'll finish it.
People didn't believe I was going to. People that knew me didn't. Yeah, you'll never finish that thing. But I knew I would.
It's interesting for those of you who are not friends with Mark on Facebook. You need to, because it's almost every day at least one story or another, and they're all in the the early days of the Speedway, very early days. You followed and got some pictures that heaven knows where you find them. And I assume some of them people have, and they send to you. So you research who and what they are and what they represent. But I found it interesting because I say to myself, you have a grandson that you spend a lot of time with. How in the world do you fit him in with all the stuff you put on Facebook, all the storylines?
Yeah, well, he's a top priority in my life too. And the great thing is he loves cars. I mean,
I wonder why.
Yeah. Well, I mean, again, it was like he just started doing that it was like the 5th word he learned, cars. And it meant so much to me. Brought him to the Indianapolis Motor Speedway for the 2019 500 when he was only 2 years old. We didn't take him the race, but we took him out on Carb Day. And I'm a founding member at the museum. So I brought my family in carrying him, and he just was squirming so much. I thought I was going to drop him. I set him down, and he's just running all through the museum. He doesn't care whether the car was from 1910 or 12 or whether it was last year's winner. He just thinks anything with 4 wheels and an engine is cool. So, I mean, I had to run along behind him because, obviously he's a really young child. And but it was a blast to see that reaction.
When it was mom and dad say, yes, great idea, Gramps, get him into driving race cars. Good move. Are they
Yeah,
for
they've
that?
got a little trepidation, but by and large, they're saying, hey, if my boy has an interest in something, that's what he's going to learn about. And learning in general is good, and it'll take you in all kinds of different directions. The main thing they've said to me, though, is if you're going to, like, I got him a go-kart for Christmas, and if you're going to do that, then you're footing the bill. So we'll see how that goes.
Uh-huh. Now, you have published recently, I think, what was it? Has it been a year yet that the book's been out?
Oh, no, it was just November.
That's what I thought. It is entitled The Legend of the First Super Speedway Battle for the Soul in American Auto Racing. What prompted you to say, I've been writing about this, it's time I put it down on paper?
Yeah, well, I mean, it just kind of hit me. And like I said, I'd done some history pieces, not just for the Speedway, but some other historical societies. And it was just something that sort of all the parts came together. And I didn't really know exactly how I was going to wrap it up, although not to be immodest, but I think the ending of it is perfect. And I write it like a novel, but it's very religious to the facts. And I just wanted to tell the story in a setting that time period, Indianapolis largely, but all across the country, because they raced all around, starting in 1902. And then just all the events that were going on in auto racing. I'll just throw one thing in. There was a huge civil war in the sport in 1907 and 1908. And the AAA was a power, but also there was another outfit called the ACA, the Automobile Club of America, and they actually were a couple of years older. And, these two organizations just got into a real contest. I think you know what I mean, what
Yeah.
word. And it just like, wow, there's nothing new under the sun. I mean, it just reminded me so much of the CART IRL days and what that spawned, some of it good, but a lot of it bad. And, but they finally divided the spoils and eventually the ACA went out of business. So the AAA became dominant. And I just like telling that story, the context, the times, and the technology. I worked really hard to think. For example, there were 32 telegraph operators that were out at the track for the first races in 1910. And the Indy 500 in 1911. And so they were tapping away, telegraphing information out at the speed of 186,000 miles per second. And you had special editions of the Los Angeles Times, same day coverage, putting out a special paper because this was a big deal. I think that the period back then, there was America's imagination was captured on a grander scale, clearly, than it is today about the goings on at the Speedway and the Indy 500.
Well, back in the day, that was the event going on for a long time, whereas now you've got so many other things that attract your attention. But right. I find it interesting that your coverage and your book is one from the beginning until when? What years?
I take it up to 1910, and it ends at the Speedway in the May races, and that was the first race meet, unless you count the time trial they did in December 1909. But it was the first full-scale race meet that the Speedway organized set after the track was paved with brick. And it was a dramatically different track from what it was. I mean, the basic dimensions were the same and the banking was the same, but the bricks were just a huge step in modernizing paving of racetracks. And it was very important for them, whoever owned a track, to be able to say, we're the fastest speedway on earth. And Carl would say that about the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. It wasn't exactly true because Brooklyn's frankly was faster, but nobody knew that, it wasn't. And so, I mean, there's a lot of hoopla on things, and Barney was out barnstorming, Barney Oldfield, and a lot of those results were fantasy, but it got people all excited about just seeing these cars go fast.
Well, you are currently, now that the book is done, you can take a little, and you work, I think you're the vice president of public relations for SVRA.
Right.
So that keeps it, and if people, and I try and post everything I get, on what SVRA.
I know you do and appreciate it.
And what they're doing, it's amazing what Tony has done. He's building this thing when people are saying, gee whiz, it's hard to do. Oh yeah? Don't tell Tony that because he hasn't figured that out yet.
If you want to see something happen, tell Tony Parella it can't happen. He loves those challenges, and he's a brilliant businessman, and I love the relationship I have with him. And the sport has really grown. And I've said, I mean, really, SVRA is to vintage racing what NASCAR is to stock car racing. It's in its own category. And what's emerging is the realization, even in mainstream media, that, hey, this is different. This isn't vintage racing that we knew. This is a real business. And I've said that. He's taken what was basically relegated to clubs, regional clubs, and he's created this national series that is a business. But that he's very religious about maintaining the culture of vintage racing, which is all about camaraderie. So it's a balance, but he's got the fastest growing property in motorsports. And a lot of people don't know that, but it's true.
And he a couple of years ago resurrected Trans Am, and I used to hear, oh, that's long gone. Oh, really? Again, don't tell Tony. Must have heard that because he's got it growing very rapidly.
Yeah, he does, and it's pretty cool. He's also got the commercial rights to the SCCA Pro Formula 4 and Formula FRA, which is really Formula 3, but I don't know what the deal is. The Europeans don't want us to use Formula 3. So the name is Formula RA for Regional Americas. And he's got scholarships that are about promoting diversity, so minorities and women. And he's already got seats filled for that. And Ernie Francis Jr., who's now a 7-time Trans Am champion, and he's only 22 years old. I remember interviewing that kid when he was like 15 or 16. He was out there racing at the entry level of Trans Am. But every year they took him up the ladder through the classes, and he's now at the top level, and he's won the championship 2 years in a row. And these are serious cars. The engines are as powerful as Indy cars. And so he's also now branching into the SCCA Formula 3. And he's got the scholarship. So, Tony's been able to pull together the support of some of the sponsors, so Sunoco and Honda and so forth, get behind this to make it possible. And whoever wins the championship gets to go to Japan and compete in their Super Formula Series. And, that's a step right to the Indianapolis 500. I mean, it's a different ladder, but hey, if you can do really well in that series, you're a candidate.
Yeah, a lot of guys have gone there and done well and come over here and continued on. So it's a good place. Yep. And might mention you mentioned him early on, but the guy overseeing this Formula F3 and 4, whatever it is Scott Goodyear.
Yeah, like I say, Scott's a good friend, and he's been doing that for a few years now.
Right.
And when Tony took the commercial rights, they've had several conversations, and Tony just speaks very highly of Scott. And Scott, we had him under personal services contract in addition to sponsoring his cars at Nortel.
Right.
And he's very much a businessman. I mean, he would have done fine in the corporate world. He everything's buttoned down. He takes presentations seriously and thoughtful, and wants to be consistent, wants to get to know the brand, the culture of the company he's represented. And I can see where he's a perfect fit for that. So he's race director at for the Formula Series of SCCA Pro.
Yeah, and he has been up till now, apparently he's been touring the country and Canada in particular with when new cars come out, bringing up and showing the dealerships all the goodies about it. He's been doing that for quite some time. Been on the road a lot with that one. Yeah. So it's a good selection. He's a good driver. He's a good talker. He's a good coach, I would presume. I mean, as far as I could see, he would be an outstanding coach. If I was looking for a young kid, I'd certainly be happy to have Scott Goodyear over my shoulder.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and part of that is he's very articulate, and he's taken the time to understand how things work. And I suppose a lot of drivers do that, but Scott has taken it to another level. So yeah, you're right. Any young driver that has the opportunity to work with Scott Goodyear is truly blessed.
Well, I have to say that the preface to your book was written by somebody we've been more or less talking about. Tony Parella wrote a very nice preface to your book, and he's commented on a number of occasions, what an outstanding writer you are, which makes it a perfect fit for you being as vice president of public relations.
Right.
Do you go to all the events, or do you keep track?
No, I haven't been going. And last year there were maybe only a couple where fans were permitted. So obviously the business took a little bit of a hit, but he has he continued to sign sponsors in spite of that. But a lot of it is the B2B environment of the paddock, the entry fees. I mean, prior to Tony coming in, it was really a back gate model. The people paying to be there to race. That was the really key revenue stream. But Tony quickly saw he could attract sponsors who would appreciate the access they could get to this very well-heeled demographic, and then promoting the thing. And I was happy to get involved with doing that. And we started the Indy Pro-Am, and that evolved into the Vintage Race of Champions. So a lot of cool drivers that we all love from our past fan days. And by the way, I also want to say Al Unser wrote a preface to the book too, and Willy T. Ribbs wrote the foreword. So thankful for their support. Their names look great on the cover of the book.
There's two bandits you got working for you.
Yeah, I've taken them out on media tours, and that's been pretty lively.
Gee, really? Al and Willy T get together. I talk to Willy every so often, and his son is doing quite well in the shooting business.
He sure is. So he's a champ.
It's interesting. Where can your book be found or purchased?
Well, really all over the place. The best way to do it is to buy online because the model of the publisher that I work with is print on demand. So there's not tons of inventory laying around at their shop or mine. But yeah, Amazon, Target, Walmart, Barnes and Noble. Also, if you're in England, Blackwell's, um, which was really a cool thing. I got a notification Blackwell's is selling this. Um, and then I've got my own author's website, markgdill.com. You can buy it there. And one of the options, and that's the only place you'll find an option for an autographed copy. And we have a shipping and handling fee we just have to do, or we'll lose money. So it's a little more expensive if it's just a retail like at Amazon, but you get the autograph, and if that's important, and it seems like a lot of people have wanted one, so happy to do it.
That means whenever you come to a racetrack, you got to have several pens in your pocket like Paul was going to have in his.
That's right. I mean, I've done some talking, and Tony, of course, said, Mark, anytime. And and he ran a full page ad in the last issue of Speed Tour Quarterly, which I know you know about, and it's a great magazine and issues of that. So when things get, when we truly get the green light out of this pandemic, I'll probably be back out at the track and do some book signings.
Is there anything new and exciting? Now, I have heard said that Tony's got an announcement upcoming that's going to really knock your socks off. Is that true?
Well, I think there's a potential for that, but I don't want to get in trouble with Tony, so I can't say a heck of a lot more. But you know how deals are. We'll see how it works out.
Yeah, but I also, as you know him better than I do, but what I know of Tony, more likely than not.
Yeah, and no matter what, one way or the other, he'll get there. And it's like the classic salesman. No is the next step to yes.
I've told people when I started this thing 35, 40, 50 years ago, I never stopped calling it, knocking on door until they told me, get the hell out of here. Then I stopped. But if they didn't say that, I'm here again.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what it takes for anything. I am pleasured and honored that I know you, that you take the time to come and talk. I think I haven't got my copy of the book yet, but it's been ordered.
No kidding. Okay.
It might have come yesterday. I didn't go look in the mailbox, but when I read your stuff, which I read almost all of it, and I comment from time to time or like it, I don't always do that, but sure, I look and read because it's interesting. And anybody who likes the 500, who's a 500 fan, you need to know how this whole thing started, who the people were that got it going, and the evolution of the sport to get to where we are today. So it's well worth the read, and I will read it the minute I get my grubby little hands on it.
Well, I'll be excited to hear what you think. And the point you made there about how it got started, and that's part of why I wrote the book. It got started before anybody thought about it, and it was just a natural progression. But there was a character that really big fans of the Speedway ought to know. His name was Ernie Morose, and he was the premier promoter of auto racing in that first decade of the 20th century. And Carl Fisher hired him. He was essentially the first general manager of the Speedway. And he wrote an article as the track was opening, reflecting back on a meeting in 1905. And he suggests that really the Speedway's history began in 1905. And that's when the four founders got together, and they were out at the fairgrounds, and they were watching a 24-hour time trial with some of Art Newby's nationals. And they sat in front of a bonfire, and more likely than not, there were a couple of flasks that were passed around. And Fisher had been, thinking about this for a while, but that's when it first came, and he says, I want you guys to help me with this. So that's the kind of stuff I like to uncover and then shared in the book.
Well, from what I see and what I read, you spend a lot of time researching, because the stories you come up with are absolutely accurate. I mean, you don't put on something I heard or somebody said through their third cousin once removed.
Right.
It's straight history. So if you get the book and you're a fan of the Indianapolis 500, in my opinion, it will be a must read.
Thank you.
I appreciate your time. I'm sure. One other thing I want to mention to Tony, every time I've talked to Tony, he's mentioned this. I said, you're getting through a bad year. He said, one thing I'm proud of, I kept everybody on the payroll all year. We didn't stumble once, which is quite amazing. I mean, he doesn't have a staff of hundreds, but the people
not at all.
kept them all going.
Yeah, and I think there's another point worth noting that up until last year, the sport had triple-digit revenue growth, which is amazing.
Yeah.
And last year, oh my God, tough year, he only had double-digit growth.
Oh.
So his whole relationship with these sponsors and communicating what the value proposition is, the viability of who these people are, is, it doesn't take long for sponsors to figure it out. They just need somebody to point it out to them and do the introductions.
And I think the perfect place for these companies, these sponsors to get together is network in the paddock, because some of these guys driving cars do not sell hot dogs on a corner someplace. There's some pretty heavy hitters that are involved in the sport. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, one of his new sponsors, Mission, the CEO does race.
Yeah.
And there's another one. It's a pretty one Le Mans. I can't think of his name. Is one.
Oh yeah, that's Kevin Buckler. He also he won had a class win as a driver at Le Mans, but he also won overall the Daytona 24 in 2003, and I think it was the last time a GT car won that race. And he owns a company called Adobe Road Winery, and they're out in Sonoma. And I got to have a few conversations with him. Never met him before. He's just one of those guys you have to admire. He has been successful at everything he's attempted, and it's because he's worked his butt off, and he earned it. And so I have a lot of respect for him, and I even bought one of his bottles of wine. So I'm going to sample that this weekend.
Well, make sure it's on the weekend, because you gotta keep writing. You can't miss the keys on the keyboard when you're writing.
Well, yeah, beer is for the weekdays. Wine.
Well, I thought you were going to say when you met him the first couple of times you had a glass of wine together, but I guess that.
No, and I haven't physically met him. I guess it's true to the pandemic world we're in. It's all been, online and all that. But he seems like a very pleasant person.
And it seems to me he fits right into the mold of Tony, because Tony has taken companies, as most people know that follow SVRA, that were in bankruptcy. He turned them around miraculously. Right. And I think, how many times has he voted one of the best companies to work for? I think he got that 3 or 4 times.
Yeah, at least twice.
Yeah. So I look forward to reading your book. I appreciate your time. I certainly hope we get to chat if you get into town at some point in time. You're allowed out.
Yeah, well, we'll get back there. I might even come up for the 500 this year. So I'm looking into that. And
things are starting to open up in Marion County. So I think, because I was told that Roger said he will run the race on the 30th. That's it. If there's 300,000, fine. If there's 30, that's fine. He's going to run it, period.
Yeah.
To keep the continuity going. It's been for 100 years. So
that's what I'm hearing. And I'm just looking forward to it. It might be weird. It'd probably be different than I've ever experienced.
Well, you never know. If
you have, who knows? Right.
If you haven't seen this place, you're going to be astounded, because in your position, when you worked here, you had access to the whole facility. You
Right.
go around this time, you go, holy smoke.
Yeah, that'd be cool. And I've several people that have been there have told me, oh my God, Mark, you wouldn't recognize the place. So it'll be,
Outside the concession stands where they used to have the green dumpsters. Now you don't even see them. They're there, but you don't see them. They're
yeah,
enclosed. And, the guardrail for the road course has all been painted. He liked what it looked like to paint the whole thing.
yeah.
It's
Yeah.
amazing. Well, thanks for your time.
Okay. Thank you for having me again.
I hope we didn't take time away from your grandson that wanted to go zoom with something.
No, I think we're going to go out and run the go-kart late this afternoon. So this was perfect timing.
And by the way, speaking of the F3 and F4, I understand Andy O'Gara and wife Sarah are going to enter a car, I believe, and I think Sarah's working with a young lady driver to bring her.
Yeah, yeah. I think her first name is Chloe. Forgive me, I don't remember the last name, but yeah, that was part of the deal. And Tony was really happy to see Sarah get involved, and obviously Scott knows her. So, and Sarah won one of our pro-ams years ago at the Speedway. So, well, she's a good friend of the sport.
The karting business is doing good. They got their karting center down Speedway. They got the one they bought Whiteland, and it's booming. And now they just opened one recently in Daytona, right outside the Speedway.
Right.
So they're moving along, and I see Kyle won a race, sprint car race down there, and finished second in the main event. But
I did see that. I follow him on Twitter.
Well, thanks for your time, Mark. We look forward to seeing you if and when you get to town. Please knock on the door and say hello.
You'd be one of the first people I call when I'm headed up there.
All right. Thanks for being with us. Enjoy the time.
Thank you, Don.
My guest has been Mark Dill. He has just come out with a book. It is called The Legend of the First Super Speedway, Battle for the Soul and American Racing. So if you get a chance to get it, and he said that name the places you can buy it, which is almost everywhere. In fact, if you're in England, you can buy it there too. We will be back again. We got some more guests lined up. We're back up and running finally, and look forward to talking with more guests. In the meantime, I want to thank Mark for being here. Until the next time, Don K saying, see you then. Thank you.